Ladies and gentlemen and distinguished guests, Your Royal Highness and members of the World Federation Against Drugs, as well as European Cities Against Drugs, and really my colleagues from NGOs and governments from around the world, I want to thank you for listening to me today, and sorry that I have to come at you virtually. I'm very sorry I couldn't meet you there in person, but I wanted to send my best wishes for a wonderful conference and just speak for a few minutes about the challenges we're facing and how I think working together is more vital really than ever. Right now there is a global coordinated response by an industry intent on making money and doing so at the risk of public health and public safety and compromising really our world's future, where we're all going to be, where our kids are going to be, what they're going to be consuming, what they're going to be doing. And we have seen this playbook before. Many of you have heard me talk about how a global tobacco industry has wreaked havoc around the world, and we now have this global cannabis industry that is trying to take their place. What we've seen in the U.S., which really in many ways is ground zero for this movement to legitimize and normalize drug use, what we've seen in the U.S. is not a great picture. Although we don't have all the data yet, we do know that, for example, overall use is on the rise, overall use of marijuana. We know that the vast majority of those who suffer from an opioid use disorder started with marijuana, and you have great guests like Dr. Bertha Madras and others to talk about that link. And we also know that states that have gone on to do this have some of the highest drug use rates in the country, both for marijuana and opioids. You'll hear from my colleague, Justin Luke Riley, and that the opioid deaths have increased in places like Colorado, as well as marijuana use. We especially see an explosion among 18 to 25-year-olds, which I find very worrying, given that this age group is going to be often entering the workforce for the first time. Their brains, of course, are under full development. Really, our brains are developing until about age 30. And the worry about the 18 to 25-year-olds is an explosive use of marijuana for regular heavy marijuana use that's going on. In fact, a report just came out last week here in the United States, actually, in fact, this week, by Quest Diagnostics, which does drug testing among American workers, both in safety-sensitive positions and non-safety-sensitive positions. And we're seeing an increase, a disproportionate increase of marijuana use among workers in so-called legal states. We're also seeing some alarming statistics that we've really never seen before. We found out this week that a new study shows 70%, that's 70% of marijuana, quote-unquote, dispensaries in Colorado for medical purposes have recommended marijuana for pregnancy, for nausea, and other things related to morning sickness in the first trimester. Now, given what we know about pregnancy and marijuana and how a study just came out today, in fact, finding that we're seeing reduced birth rate and other major complications as a result of marijuana and pregnancy, this is alarming. And this is really an example of an industry that's unhinged. We also know that globally they are working with big donors with big pockets to sow the seeds of doubt for our UN drug control system. And they have persuaded countries like Uruguay and subsequently, imminently, Canada to go down this path of legalization in pure violation of our drug control treaties. In many ways, this feels like we're 100 years ago talking about tobacco, and we're seeing this global industry unleash. In fact, I'm sure everyone knows that before the tobacco industry existed, very few people died of tobacco-related illnesses. We didn't have the lung cancer incidence that we have anywhere near now. In fact, we had very few cases of lung cancer related to tobacco. We didn't have the deadly sort of blend of Indian and British tobacco that gives us this deadly combination delivered in a cigarette, and now e-cigarette in many places around the world. E-cigarette use is now overtaking regular cigarette use. This should be an example for all of us, and that's why it is more important than ever for all of us to bind together, work together, put every difference that we have aside, and focus on really what's going on. And what's going on is really a global movement to destabilize our next generation for the profit of a few people. And the more we can get that message out and have a global coordinated strategy, the better. That's why meetings like this that you're having in Gothenburg, and I'm sorry I couldn't return to Gothenburg again this year, these meetings are vital. And I support all of you. The whole team at SAM supports everybody here. We're so happy to work with colleagues, for example, Drug Free America Foundation, and so many of the other colleagues that are there, both from America and abroad. We know that we are on the right side of history, that history will look at all of us in a way that, in a positive way, and we stand with all of you. So thank you, and I hope you are having and will have a wonderful meeting.